Well, hello to my next episode. So tonight we're installing hopefully, the rear and front covers. Okay, so here, the rear cover on here, and the front cover, obviously, on the front. Now, my challenge here tonight is that this engine is on a stand. And as you can see, there is not a whole lot of room between the back of the stand and the crank and the back of the engine to put the back cover on in a what I would call a safe manner. Okay, but I'm going to give it a try, and we'll see how it goes. And if it's too tight of a fit and we can't safely get it on the back of the engine, we'll take a break if we have to, and we'll make use of our shop crane to lift the engine and maybe set it down, on a safe surface to work on it. All right, to work on specifically the back. All right. So I'm going to set the camera here, and I'll try to get it so it's pointing down and facing in, and we'll give this a shot, see what happens. Okay, now the book says, before installing the rear cover, make sure the rear oil gallery plug, the barbell restrictor, is still in place at the driver rear side of the block. And that's right in there. See that? Let me see if, I'm not sure if you can see that or not. But it's right in there. Okay. Kind of dark, kind of hard to see, but it's right in there. All right. But trust me, it's there. All right. So let me set the camera back down in here. And all right. And then it says, set a new gasket in place on the rear cover using the first couple of threads of each rear cover bolt to hold it there. Wipe off, but do not lubricate, the crankshaft's rear flange. I've already done that. I've wiped it off. It's good and dry. It's not lubricated. You must be very careful when sliding the rear cover onto the block, as it's easy for the lips of the rear crank seal to become misaligned while doing this, resulting in a later oil leak. Okay. However, updates to GM's seal design have made this much more foolproof, though. The aforementioned wheel-to-wheel powertrains tool, aluminum donut, helps ease an earlier style seals transition onto the crank. Once all rear cover bolts are started by hand, you have... Okay, so before I get to that, let's go ahead and do what has been described thus far. So here's the package of new bolts that it came with. So I'm going to open this up. And here's the cover. And here is the seal. All right, and this is the rear main seal right here that it was talking about. So we're going to put a couple bolts through there. Like the instruction. Oh, I see what's going on. You actually have to thread it through here. Okay, otherwise it just doesn't, it actually does thread through here. Oh, that's interesting. All right. So I was wondering how, here, let me go ahead and move the camera right here. I was wondering how the bolts were going to just simply hold the seal, but actually, believe it or not, they won't just push through. You actually have to turn it a few threads a few times. Okay, so you see how that, I mean, it'll lift up, but it ain't gonna fall. It'll lift up, but it ain't gonna fall out. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish putting these bolts in. All right, so they're all on here. All right, so now the tricky part is to lower this in here. Okay. And gently push it onto the... All right. All right, that rear seal looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and start to tighten some of these down. All right, the rest of these are going to have to be tightened with a wrench. Some of these are just going to be too tight to be able to. Okay, now the book says, once all the rear cover bolts are started by hand, you have a choice. The first option is to use a GM cover alignment tool to align the rear cover to pan sealing surface with the block's oil pan rails before torquing the rear cover bolts to 18 foot-pounds. As an alternative, you may visually align the cover to pan sealing surface with the pan rails, tighten the bolts, then verify no more than 20/2000 inch drop between the pan rails and rear covering using a straight edge and feeler gauge. Any protrusion of the cover beyond the pan rails is acceptable. All right, so basically what that's saying is we need to make sure that the top, well, first of all, the top of this here cannot be raised up above these pan rails, okay? So the idea is to get like a straight edge. All right, so I'm going to take this piece of straight edge steel and I'm just going to lower it right here. Okay, so we can kind of just look across and we can verify that. It does appear on this one that there is. Okay, you see that? So we need to push that down. All right, see how I just pushed it down? All right, so what I'm trying to do here with this piece of steel is lay this across the oil pan rail and line it up, put it on top of the rear cover, and make sure that there's basically no gap, that they're exactly evenly lined, okay? Yeah, and then we're going to do the same thing on this side. And clearly we could see that this side looks to be perfectly lined up. And then this side, it looks like there's just a little bit of a gap. So I might try to pull this side up just a bit. All right, so I feel like I'm reasonably confident that I can tighten this down. So I'm gonna get an extension so I could reach further back there. And my 12mm socket. All right, so now we need to get our feeler gauge. And it can't be any more than 20 thousandths. Okay, so I'm going to go to 19. Start with 19. Okay. And I'm going to stick my straight edge in here and see if I could get this in here. Nope. All right, let's see if we can do that on this one. Nope. Let's try 10 thousandths. Can we get 10 thousandths in here? Maybe. Not really. Well, we could kind of sort of get it in here. It does appear that maybe this pan is just ever so slightly above the rails. So I'm going to loosen everything again and try to drop it down a little bit. All right, so I've got this all level here. This is about as level as I can make it. This is about as level as I can make it. I put a straight edge here, and I put my feeler gauge at 20 thousandths, which is the maximum allowable space that's allowed, and it won't go in. Okay, so that's good. Same thing on this end. All right, that's good. So I'm feeling confident about that. And these are not higher than the rails, so I think we're all set. The only thing I have left to do is tighten down these bolts, and then we'll move to the front cover. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and tighten down these bolts to 18 pounds, I believe is the spec. Let me check here. 18 foot-pounds. Yep, 18 foot-pounds. And then I'm going to be back for the front cover. See you soon. Okay, so I just finished up the rear cover. I verified that everything's level here and that nothing's sticking up, protruding, or sticking down any further than they should. Now, one thing that I couldn't do, because it's on the stand, okay, I couldn't torque every single bolt. Okay, so I've torqued, there's how many bolts here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I've torqued 10 out of the 14, because 4 of them I just simply can't get to, okay, even with wobble extensions. But I tightened them down pretty good to what I thought was proper torque specs. Once I get this off the stand, then I'll go back and I will definitely make sure that these are properly torqued. And obviously I'll have to do that before I put the flex plate on. Okay, so I'm done with that. Moving on to the front cover. I had a question from a viewer on the last video, or a recent video, I should say, asking what book I'm using. So here is the book that I'm using, How to Rebuild GM LS Series Engines. Okay, I guess this is sort of the model number, if you will, of the book, SA 147 by Chris Warner. And this is the book that I'm using. Says it covers all Gen 3 and Gen 4 LSs. It's been a pretty good book. Let's see, it'll run you about $30 if you pay the sticker price, but obviously you can get this somewhat cheaper on Amazon. Okay, so that's the book I'm using. Now we're on to installing the front cover. All right, and the key thing with this, okay, and I've got a brand new front cover, which obviously has the seal, okay? and it has the cam position sensor built into it. Has the brand new seal, but it also has this brand new connector here, which I am very appreciative. That was a nice little bonus. I wasn't expecting it to have this piece right here. And when I was actually going through my old parts, I was like, man, the old one is like really rusted. And I was like, all right, well, I might have to go and buy a new one of these here. And it turns out when I pulled this cover out of the box, it had one. So very, very pleased with that. All right, so as you can see, the seal here in the book explicitly says how important it is for everything to be properly lined up. Okay, the cover has to be in its exact spot. Okay, and so there's a couple tools that are sold to help line things up, both vertically, horizontally, and side to side. And basically, what I did was I found on Amazon, I found a couple of sort of aftermarket tools for this job instead of the GM very expensive tools. Again, I'm trying to keep the tool costs limited, and this is something you're not going to find for rent at or to borrow at like O'Reilly's or Advanced or AutoZone. So, but basically, what this does. Okay, so here we go. The initially I thought that this tool goes on first, but it doesn't. Actually, you have to first put the cover on sort of just loosely, okay, and then just kind of start threading it by hand. Just get a couple of them in here and thread it by hand. And we're going to go ahead and do that. Get that took care of. Again, I'm not putting this all away. Just getting it started. All right, now comes the tool, and you push it on and line it up inside like that. Okay, and then that right there gets things kind of lined up, and then you just make sure that these two tips here are lined up. All right, so does that make sense? We're gonna go ahead and let's see, this sits down a little bit lower, so I'm gonna try to pick this up a little bit if possible so that it lines up. And then I'm going to make sure it's still flush. All right, not loosen it. All right, I'm just gonna pick up this side just a little bit more. Let's see where we're at. Go on it. Yeah, that's pretty much perfectly lined. All right. All right. One last check to make sure that things are lined up. And remember, what do we need? 20 or 20 thousandths. Here's 20 thousandths on our feeler gauge. And we're just going to stick that in there to make sure there's no gap. And that looks really good. Same thing here, no gap. That looks really good. These almost look aligned almost perfectly. All right. And we're going to go ahead and pull this out. I think. Let's go ahead and torque these down to 18. All right, last time. Boom, 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 boom. All right, now back to the main challenge: getting this tool out, because that thing is in there good. There we go. All right. I'm going to get a flashlight here and we're going to shine this in here so we can see what this looks like. What do you think? Does that still look good? I don't know. It's hard for me to tell. I'm not sure what it's supposed to look like. All right. All right. So I think I'm feeling pretty good about this front cover. It looks pretty good. I like the seal. The seal looks good. Everything's lined up. That's lined up. That is lined up. Look at that. That looks pretty good, actually. That's lined up. The gasket went on real nice all the way around. Again, I'm very pleased that this piece comes new. So I think I'm ready to roll. This little tool right here sure came in handy. I'll tell you what. This tool cost 40 bucks, and you know, yeah, I could have waited and done all this when I was putting the harmonic balancer on. But you know what? Why wait? You know, I've spent this much. Why not, you know, get the tool for 40 bucks and get the job done? Okay, so believe it or not, I've spent the better part of my evening here, at least 2-3 hours, putting the front cover on and putting the rear cover on. Okay, and for experienced engine builders and people who have built a ton of these, you're probably thinking, well, geez, I can probably do this in 15 minutes and that in 15 minutes and be moving on. Well, again, you know, I'm still kind of new. Well, I'm actually new at this. You know, this is the first time I've rebuilt an engine. So, yeah, I've had plenty of mechanical experience prior, but nothing where I've actually torn down and rebuilt an actual engine. So, so this is my first time at this. I want to make sure more than anything that I get it right. So this is certainly not something I'm rushing through. It's not a daily driver, so I'm not a rush to get this done. And, you know, just taking my time to make sure it's done right. And again, really a hat tip to this book I'm using here. Really, really good book. That's helping me guide me through this and has all the instructions. So I'm very pleased. The next step, I'm going to hang it up for tonight and start fresh tomorrow. But the next step right here is preparing to install the oil pan. So, so the book says we're going to do the oil pan, and just to kind of give you a preview as to what to expect the next few days, we're going to install the oil pan. And then we're going to install the front camshaft position sensor. Although we don't have to do that because our cover, the cover we just put on, came with one. It was already installed. So anyway, that's one less step we got to do. And then we turn the engine around and start working on the lifters and the guide trays. So we're gonna, after we get the oil pan on, flip it and start working on the top half of the engine. So lifters will go in next, and then the heads, believe it or not. We're just like 2 steps away from putting the heads on this thing. Head gasket, heads, head bolts. I do have new head bolts. Let's see what else. We're going to then do push rods, rocker arms. Let's see, valve covers, the valley cover, oil pressure, knock sensors, wiring harness for the knock sensors, coolant air bleed pipes, intake manifold, fuel rails. We'll probably go ahead and do the injectors and that sort of thing. The intake manifold and throttle body, the flex plate, harmonic dampener, and then that's it. The book says after that, final engine assembly is complete. Although there's other stuff we need to add, obviously, like the starter, the water pump, the ignition coils, all that sort of stuff. So I mean, we have a ways to go yet. But the point is I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. I could see the light. Good night, all.